Hello, friends. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Rebranding God podcast. I'm Alex Gill, your host. And if you prefer to watch this episode, there's a link to my YouTube channel and you might watch this in a video format. So today I want to speak about a topic that has been very close to my heart because it's part of a book that I'm working on. And it's a book about love. It's a book about connection, communication. So I'm gonna break this down, of course, and try to make this into a 30 minutes or so episode. But I want to talk about how do we master the art of responding versus reacting, which is such an important aspect of communication. How can we respond from a place of grace, compassion, and truth versus reacting out of our outdated models or old programs or conditioning from childhood? Because reaction comes from that place when we are upset, and as one of my greatest teachers, Dr. Gabor Mate, says, when we are upset, think of an upset as this place where we get into an emotional turmoil. We can feel literally in our body when we're upset. When we're upset, he says that we are no longer in the present moment, that we are actually in our baggage. That's what another teacher of mine, who I learned neurolinguistic program, used to say, when we upset, reacting, we are actually in our baggage of the past. So we're not seeing the situation, we're not perceiving the situation any longer from the lenses of the present moment. And that is the source of a lot of drama, a lot of unnecessary drama. And of course, I'm speaking today in the context of relationships. If I'm talking about communication is about communing, coming together. So this whole episode is in the context of relationships. And relationships, to me, are one of the most important aspects of life because it's our source of connection, it's our source of togetherness, it's even our source of healing, because we all got injured, we all got hurt in relationships. And it's by being together in safe and secure relationships that we actually get to repair and heal from our past wounds. So mastering the art of responding versus reacting is a super important aspect of communication. You go from drama to growth, and I'm always interested in truth, in growth, and connection, which are the qualities of thriving in anything, thriving and flourishing. So I want to add 3 words here to the word response. One is obvious: responsibility. Responsibility. We take responsibility for our part. It is so important to be in any evolved, mature relationship, and can be a relationship with anybody, relationship with your colleagues at work, relationship with your neighbors, relationship with your family, and your most intimate relationship to your partner, your spouse, your girlfriend, boyfriend. So responsibility, being able to respond as well. The second one is response flexibility. The flexibility is about you being able, you choosing to stretch your mind, to stretch yourself out of your models, like get out of your own box. So having the flexibility is like looking at the situation or listening to something from a different viewpoint. Having the flexibility, stretching your thinking, stretching your models. And the third one is response accountability, like owning your part. Owning your part in all relationships. Because what I always say is this: it doesn't matter how irrational somebody else might present themselves, how they might show up as irrational. They might be caught in their upset in their drama, in their baggage. And yet, in any relationship, the moment you are in a relationship, you are participating too. And a lot of times unconsciously. And that's where most of our learning can really happen. And I'm going to share a little bit how we explore the unconscious part so we can grow and learn in any relationship. So exploring responsibility, response flexibility, and response accountability. Owning your part. Because again, if we're going to create any mature, evolved relationship with anybody, we need to be able to hold ourselves accountable. Because again, we always playing a part. And the invitation here is for you to look at every single situation, every challenge in your relationships as a great opportunity, a great invitation to grow. Because in every challenge, we have a potential for two things. We have potential to grow, to learn. We also have a potential to not learn anything and to keep recreating the same patterns in the drama. So you can grow, or if you're going to a place where you're not responsible, you don't have the flexibility, you don't show up in accountability, you're going to keep creating the same dramas over and over. And this is one of the reasons a lot of relationships end. So I'm going to pause and bring some wisdom here, which I think has everything to do with this episode today. And I'm going to read a paragraph from a book called Diamond Heart, Book 1, by A.H. Almaas. And I'll put the resources under this episode. This paragraph that I'm about to share with you has improved my life so much, because every time I have a challenge, I have had many challenges with finances, challenges in my work, challenges in new relationship. And by adopting the philosophy of A.H. Almaas, I have grown so much. It's like you take growth that would take maybe 1 year or 2 years or 5 years, and you can bring that to one situation. So I call quantum growth, in a way, when you're really willing to investigate, to explore your part and what is there for you to learn. So this is the paragraph. Your conflicts, all the difficult things, the problematic situations in your life are not chance or haphazard. They are actually yours. They are specifically yours, designed specifically for you by a part of you that loves you more than anything else. The part of you that loves you more than anything else has created roadblocks to lead you to yourself. Now, I know for some of you, if you not engage in some spiritual studies, some high consciousness teachings, this might be a hard thing to grasp, especially the part that says the part of you that loves you more than anything else has created roadblocks to lead you to yourself. And if you're angry, if you're upset about something that's happened in your life, I'm sure it's easy for you to ask, what the hell was that? What part of me loves me so much that created this very crappy situation? Well, that's where growth comes in. And nobody has ever said that growth is easy. This path is not a path of rainbows and roses and unicorns all the time. They come. But after you do some exploration and face some parts of you that it's not so fun. So what he's referring here is that there is this, let's just call it energy. There is this energy you can call the highest self, true self, higher power, God, source. There's this energy that is bigger than us, that is constantly creating situations for us to evolve and to grow. In other words, for us to break free from our distorted models, from illusions, from fear, from personalities and masks that we all create in our childhood, all our conditioning, they're all illusions. So the situations happen in order to help us to break free and to keep coming back to ourselves. What he meant by that, it's coming back to our essence. In our essence, we are intact. We can't get hurt. We can't get offended when somebody judges us. That part, in that aspect, we don't have a broken heart because the heart cannot break. So it is our higher self. It's the part of us that is behind all the personalities. It's that I'm just am, that high consciousness. So we're not going to get deep into the high consciousness conversation because it can get very abstract. Let's stick with communication. Why that quote is so relevant to this conversation today? Because when you look at every challenging relationship, every challenging situation or challenge conflicts in your relationship, if you look at the situations as an opportunity to grow and to learn, to connect, to get even more intimate with the person, then you lean in instead of go back. Why do we react a lot of times instead of responding? Because reaction is coming from our conditioning. And the reaction comes always from one place. It's a place of fear. Because when we're in a place of love, we can respond. And when we're in a place of fear, we're going to react. Now, what happens in those reactions, even though there's no danger, there's no threat, because I'm talking about relationships in our lives. I'm not talking about you walking on the street and being attacked by somebody, because in that situation, yes, you have to fight, or you have to flight, you have to punch the person, or you have to run for your life. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about relationships here. And what happens when we react is that a part of our brain has been activated, has been triggered, and all that part of the brain senses is that we're under a threat. We are in danger, so we react. We are in our stress response. When we react, when we're upset, we're no longer in the present moment, something from our past has been activated. Maybe in your past, your mom used to judge you a lot. So then in the present moment, if somebody close to you, a friend or your partner, makes even a slight comment of judgment, you might get very upset, even though that was very small, because that wound that was created with your mother got activated, and you react. You go into fight or flight. You go into attack. In other words, you're gonna create drama, and we all do it. I have created much drama in my life, and as you do this work, as you get better at, you realize that there's rarely any drama in your life, because if you learn how to respond, even when others are creating drama, you don't get hooked. Because if somebody's showing up in their drama, in their baggage, and they're activating your baggage, you're hooked. Then two people are hooked in that drama, and nothing, no growth can happen in that space. So in order to respond instead of reacting, number one, you need to be able to slow yourself down and be aware. We can only be aware when we slow down. Because if we don't slow down, we go back to those automatic programs and we go to our old conditioning, and that's when we react. So you need to set an intention and really practice slowing yourself down. And it's easy for me to slow down. Number one, I set the intention to slow down in all my relationships, especially my intimate relationship. And in the moment that I feel there's something in that conversation that is starting to trigger me a little bit, that's the moment that I set the intention even more strongly. They're like, ooh, I really need to slow myself down, because I know this conversation can be going to a place that I will get triggered. So this comes, of course, with a lot of inner work, with a lot of self-awareness. And again, you get better as you sit with yourself more and investigate and develop a deeper relationship with yourself. So in the moment, because my intention is always to create connection, to lean in instead of reacting and run away, to go back. Because if I do that, I'm separating from the person. And my intention is always to connect, even in moments of conflicts. Connect in the moments of conflicts, and that creates intimacy instead of going to old survival strategies in fight or flight, or shut down is another one. So in the moment, if you can slow yourself down and you become aware that you're getting triggered, you have a choice. Just like Viktor Frankl says in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's such a beautiful framework. In between stimulus and response, you have a space in between. It's the pause. In the space, you have the power to choose. And that's what we're doing here. Choosing between response or reaction. And in reaction, actually, you have no choice, because reaction just happens automatically. Reaction comes out of awareness. We can only choose when we are aware. So slow down, become aware, and make a choice. In responding from a place of love, it's always what is going to lead to connection, to resolutions, and to growth. So in that space where you're choosing to respond, I would practice two qualities. They are very important in any communication. First of all, the most important part of any communication is not what you say. It's your ability to listen. Any communication expert would say that is the highest quality of communication, listening. And I'm going to add a second quality here, curiosity. When you bring these two qualities, there's a lot of more qualities in communication. But when you bring the art of listening and the quality of curiosity, if you just master those two qualities, it's almost like everything else is going to fall into place. Because listening is the art of being fully present and not being thinking what you're going to say next, or not being caught in your old models. Because if you're doing that, you're not in the true presence and you're not truly listening. You might be hearing, but hearing is different than listening. So you listen, and in that listening can create space for you to be curious. Curiosity dismantles any room for judgment. When you're curious, meaning authentically curious about what the other person is coming from, even when you disagree with what the other person is saying, let's face it, no matter how much we love our friends or partners, we're going to disagree with certain ideas or their opinions. So the whole purpose of this kind of communication, responding versus reacting, is actually to create more connections even in those disagreements. No drama, growth. Remember, we're here to create growth and not drama, because the drama is usually the wounded child. The wounded child is creating drama. But let's not discard that either, because that wound needs to be healed. And in order to heal those wounds, we need to have compassion for that child, for all those parts, which I'm going to address a little bit later. So in the choice of responding, you're listening and you deploy the quality of curiosity, where you stay curious, you ask questions, you inquire whatever you need. What do you want to know that will help you to understand the other person better? And if you get triggered in that conversation, because you will be, that's being a human. I get triggered. I do all this work and I get triggered. And because my triggers are treasures, every trigger is an opportunity to grow, I'm going to explore that. But in the moment that you trigger, it's not a good time to explore what's going on with you. Just know that you trigger. And in the moment, you might be able, if you have a wide window of tolerance, meaning if you have the ability to regulate your nervous system on demand and stay in the conversation, that's great. but a lot of times you might not be able to stay in the conversation. And the best thing you can say that can be the most respectful and loving thing towards yourself and the other is to say, I'm getting upset, I'm getting triggered, and I need to pause this conversation for right now because I'm not in a place that I can respond in truth and kindness. So ask for time, get back, remove yourself from the conversation. If boundaries have been crossed, then stand for yourself and say, I cannot continue this conversation with you because I'm getting upset and I'm perceiving that you are upset as well. So let's stop this conversation right now. And you have all the rights to stop the conversation and to leave the room. And so that's, of course, when the things escalate. As you get better, you might be able to shift the direction of the conversation in the beginning. But a lot of times we're not, because we don't have control of how the other person is going to show up or how the other person might even respond when we come from a place of love and compassion. Because the truth, unfortunately, even when you come from a place of love and compassion, if the other person is not used to that language, they might react to that language too. They might think that you're just being fake. They might get mad that you're coming from a place of love. So we can control other people's reactions or responses. All you can do is to hold yourself accountable for your response. That's why it's your responsibility for your own communication. It's your responsibility for your own flexibility, how you're choosing to see the situation. And it's your responsibility to be accountable for your own actions, but not the other person. So then when you get triggered, let's talk about the situations when you getting very activated, getting very triggered. Even when the other person is coming triggered or not coming triggered, it doesn't matter. This is about you. When you get activated, upset, triggered, look at that as an opportunity, an invitation to grow. And these are some of the questions that can really help you. So after you remove yourself from the situation, that you're more regulated, again, you have to be out of survival. You can't be in that stress response and doing this kind of inner work. When we are stressed out, it's not time to heal and to do inner work. So after you use some strategies of co-regulation, and if you need help with that, you can just, contact. I can teach you some strategies for regulating the nervous system. Have the courage to investigate. Why you got so triggered? What parts of you needed to create a situation? Now we go back to that paragraph that I just read in the beginning by A.H. Almas. Can you have the courage to investigate and compassion, curiosity, which means no guilt. This is not about blaming yourself. Blame is not part of this conversation. Blaming yourself or blaming the other. Blame doesn't belong in the context of evolution, growth, high consciousness. Okay, so that's the tone that we're talking here. It's about evolution. So you don't evolve, you don't grow if you're blaming. So you gotta go above the blame, where you hold yourself responsible, flexible, and accountable. And this is about being an adult. This is not about guilt or blaming yourself for anything. So here's some questions you can ask as you investigate. You can do that in a walk. You can do that journaling or just bringing your meditation when you're calm. And that's usually when I do this work, when I meditate. You can ask yourself, what parts of myself needed to create this situation in order for me to grow? How did I participate unconsciously in the creation of this challenge? How did I participate unconsciously in the creation of this drama? Now, I highlight the word here, unconsciously. Why? Because none of us woke up in the morning and made a conscious decision to create some problems and drama. Some people might. I'm sure you don't do that. I definitely don't like drama. Nobody likes drama. And yet a lot of people are creating constant drama unconsciously. So how did I participate unconsciously in the situation? And that's when you really interested in learning about yourself, your part, and you ask the question with sincerity, the answer always comes. That's when you start releasing information, data from your unconscious mind, and once you become conscious, that's where the gem is. That's like when you open the oyster and you find the pearl. That pearl is that insight, and then with that insight, you have a choice. You can release the emotion. You can release the false perceptions, the limiting beliefs that were associated with that emotion. And also in that moment, you're like, this is why I created this situation, so I could learn something about myself. Let me give you an example of that happened with me recently. I was on the phone with my beloved, and she made a couple comments that I perceived as judgment, and I didn't like it. I don't like being judged. In fact, I'm allergic to being judged, which goes with a wound that a lot of us have, which is the worry about what somebody thinks or says about us. And usually we only care about what people say when people are close to us. People that we're not connect or attached to, we don't care. But the people that we feel attached to it, we usually worry about what they say. So when I perceived that judgment, I felt my body going backwards. And after the phone call, I felt myself shutting down. And that's my form of reaction, which I learned a few years ago. I thought reaction was just somebody creating drama, speaking out loud, screaming, just being obnoxious. No. Creating drama reacting can also be shutting down, because creating drama, in other words, is being in a state of stress instead of fight, flight, or freeze. And shutting down is a freezing response, and that's my survival strategy. So I create drama or reaction by shutting down. I'm not somebody that gets in other people's face and fight. That's not part of my personality. So I became curious and I investigated. The next morning I was investigating and realized that the part of me that feels extremely sensitive to judgment is the perfectionist in me. The perfectionist is an aspect of our egos. Especially in close relationships, friendships, intimate relationship, I want to be perfect. Especially as I do this work, there's this arrogance almost of I know better, I need to do better, I need to show up in perfection in my relationships. So I realized that when that perfectionist sensed that threat of judgment, because there's no threat, there's no judgment, really. I was making a comment about my car, my hair. There's no really anything threatening me, but I felt that way. But it wasn't threatening my true self, because again, the true self cannot be threatened. It was threatening the ego, the perfectionist in me. And what is the perfectionist? I had a big insight on that. The perfectionist is protecting the part of me that is imperfect. So at that moment, it was an aha moment for me, because I realized, wait a minute, if I can easily get triggered when somebody makes a kind of harmless comment that I perceive as judgment, I perceive as a threat, because I shut down. If I shut down, it's because my brain perceives as a threat. If I embrace the imperfect parts of me, there's no need anymore for any perfectionist. So what I'm getting to here, what I'm teaching you here, without going into details, because this can be a long conversation, is that all aspects of our ego, the perfectionist, for example, is there to protect the wounded child. Is there to protect also our shadow. What is the shadow? Is this part of me that I deny. Is the imperfect parts of me. So if I can embrace and accept fully my imperfections, I don't need this protection of the ego anymore. And I will no longer be triggered when somebody makes a comment, because let's face it, judgment is simply somebody's opinion. It's nothing else. Judgment is somebody's opinions based on their own model of the world, based on their own programs and conditionings. And why so many of us get so activated and triggered or upset when we get judged? Because it's touching the imperfection in us, and we're only getting triggered because we don't accept those parts. And this can get complicated if we start talking about shame, but it can be as simple as that. So this is an example that happened with me just recently, that instead of being mad at her and even creating drama, I didn't create any drama. I simply became curious. And what you're going to find with this work is that a lot of times you resolve this within yourself, and a conversation with your partner or your best friend or a family member is not even necessary anymore, because you took responsibility, you were flexible, you took accountability of your part, and you resolved. And then you realized that you had a great insight, and that was a tremendous moment of growth for yourself. So I almost want to thank the person. I thank usually people when others trigger me. If it's appropriate, I say thank you so much for triggering that part of me, because you helped me to grow. And this is how we can grow and evolve in relationships, by having the courage to investigate, having the compassion, curiosity to look at all these parts inside us that can easily feel insulted, feel injured, or perceive as an injury, because those are not emotions. We use the word feel, but those are only perceptions. And I believe it was Eckhart Tolle that said, in any situation, the challenging situation, be more interested in what's happening inside you than what's going on with the other person. It's such a waste of time when we sit and ruminate in somebody else's actions. And I'm not saying some things don't need, or a lot of things don't need to be addressed in relationships. And if we want to have connecting growth in our relationships, any relationship, it's really, really essential that we take accountability, responsibility for our own part. Because when I do that, I'm investigating my own baggage. What was my part? And then I'm able to have a conversation with that person from a place of truth. Then I'm no longer in my distorted mindset. I'm no longer in my limitations. I can see the truth. It's like stepping back and be able to see all the pieces. Oh, I was triggered because there's this part of me that perceived that you were doing this, but the truth is you were just doing that. And my wounded self, my younger self, felt scared, and that's why I reacted. Have the courage, the vulnerability to share that with people that are very close to you, because in a way we're helping each other to heal our younger selves. The moment we show up in that accountability, responsibility, flexibility, that we're curious and we become vulnerable with each other, we are creating stronger connections. And that's what we want. We all want to feel safe and secure in our relationships, so we can connect deeply, be ourselves, and be in love, in the place of love. So that's the main message of this episode, this video today. So be curious about the parts of you that are so triggered. Again, if you remember, I think I mentioned this early in this podcast, or I don't know. I had to record this all over again because I record this podcast without pressing record. So I'm having to record again. So forgive me if I'm repeating this. But as Dr. Gabor Mate said, one of my favorite teachers, he always said, if we're upset, if we're triggered, we are no longer in the present moment. We're in the past. We're in our baggage. So know that and then create space, calm yourself down, slow yourself down, co-regulate, go take a walk, go take a bath, calm yourself down, widen your lenses, and look at the whole picture. And to look at the whole picture, you have to start by looking inside yourself. Inside yourself. And if you have difficulty doing this work, that's when you work with a skilled coach or therapist. So if you need any help with this, just book a call with me and let's see if I can support you in this journey, or bring these issues to your own therapist or to somebody that you trust. So that's what I have for you today, friends. Choose response instead of reaction. Just know that in reaction, there is no growth. In reaction, you are caught in the younger self. And also have compassion for your younger self. Don't punish that younger self because that younger self showed up in your relationships. What I want to share with you here last is before I did all this inner child healing in this past 2.5 years or so, three plus years actually, I remember 10-12 years ago, I was so angry at my inner child that I blamed that younger self for all my problems. And by doing that, guess what I created? A lot more. I created so much more drama. Think what would happen when you deny, if you have a child or you just imagine a child, when you deny that child's needs. If you having a hard time associating with that, just think of yourself as a child. A lot of our problems, a lot of our drama, a lot of our hurt and wounds, traumas, came because our needs were denied in our childhood. Just because our parents didn't know any better. We're not here to blame the parents. But when you deny the needs of a child, when you deny the needs of your younger self, meaning you deny parts of yourself, that drama is going to get louder and bigger. And how do you know? The patterns get repeated and the drama gets, in a way, worse. So embrace all parts of you. Know that when you are in the upset, it's the wounded child, the wounded younger self that got activated. And then in your healing work, it's about bringing tremendous compassion and love to that part of you, because all those personalities that were created in our childhood, the survival strategies or coping mechanisms, they were there to protect us, to defend us. They helped us becoming that perfectionist, that high achiever, that hardcore athlete, saved our lives in our childhood. But that always working for love, always working for validation, always working hard for belonging, which is what we did as children, no longer serves us. We don't need to work for love. We don't need to work for validation or for belonging. What we need to do is to come back to our true selves, because that's the place of belonging. And with that, we start creating deep, rich connections and relationships in our lives, and the belonging just happens. And we're only going to learn how to really relate and commune with each other in a space that is safe, secure, and loving. And that's what my book is about. That's what these episodes are about, especially today. So choose response versus reaction. And when you're reacting, be curious, explore why you're reacting, why you got triggered, why you got activated. Again, the words of Eckhart Tolle, be more interested in your own triggers than the other person's actions. So thank you so much. If you like this episode, please share with your friends, with your family, in your social media. Give us 5-star review and let me know. Let me know what kind of guests you want me to bring into this show. remember, this show is about healing, happiness, and high power. So what do you want to know? What are you curious about? What would you like me to discuss more? And I will bring more solo episodes on those topics, or I will find the guests that are the experts and can share some great insights with you. So for now, be well. Thank you so much. Blessings.